All right. Hello, everyone. So, my name is Dylan Steffel, and today I decided to talk about sports in Latino communities. So, first off, before I even begin, obviously, what's the first kind of sport that generally tends to come to mind when it comes to Latino communities, especially those in like Mexico, Spain, um, and those kind of countries? That's right, soccer. But I'm here to tell you that that's not actually the case. So, first off, there are obviously the history of sports in Latino communities. There are a couple big milestones. The first of which in 1950 is the first kind of Cuban players were starting to enter into Major League Baseball. And then around the 1980s, we saw a surge of Latino players coming into professional soccer. The man on the left is a man by the name of Roberto Clemente, and he is generally regarded as one of the greatest or one of the greater baseball players of all time. And he is the first Latin born MLB player to be inducted into the MLB Hall of Fame in 1973. The man on the right is a man by the name of Julio Cesar Chavez, and he's generally regarded as one of the best Mexican boxers because the Ring magazine actually regarded him as the greatest Mexican born um, boxer in the years 1990 up until 1993. Now, I mentioned a little earlier that baseball actually tends to come to mind a lot of the times for some people. Well, according to quote the Hispanic Heritage Baseball Museum Hall of Fame, yes, I know a very long name, but still, they say that the HHBMHOF is International Museum Hall of Fame that is dedicated to recognizing the contributions made to baseball by Hispanic players. And ever since this was created, it has inducted 74 players, coaches, broadcasters, even some players from the Negro Leagues when baseball was segregated up until the 50s or 60s, as well as some pioneer executives. Some of the players that a lot of people tend to recognize are obviously Roberto Clemente from earlier, Vladimir Guerrero, and interestingly enough, although he was born in California and is regarded as an American baseball player, Ted Williams actually does have some Hispanic heritage. And in 2002, after his death, he was inducted into the HHBM HOF. And as of today, 28% of players in the MLB are of Hispanic descent, mainly from places such as Cuba, Dominican Republic, Mexico, and in some cases, Spain. Obviously, who's that man on the right? That is Lionel Messi, generally regarded as the greatest soccer player of all time. Getting into which then lead me into my next point, the most prominent sport that people tend to think of Latino for the Latino community. I mean, soccer. Obviously, when in the early 20th century, when immigrants specifically from the Spain or Mexico were coming into the United States, they brought some of their soccer traditions uh, and helped bring about the rise of soccer into the United States. Hence why in the 1980s, you saw a surge of Latino players starting to come into professional soccer. Also, on a more modern scale, Major League Soccer and Liga MX, otherwise it's a another form of professional soccer, it raised viewership among Hispanic fans and especially with the MLS, it raised viewership for American fans because they got to watch their teams play. And through that, they got to realize some of these Latino or Hispanic players that were starting to play for their for their favorite teams, I mean, and helping leads into the US men's and even women's national teams featuring the Latino players and those that are of Hispanic origin. And as I just mentioned, Lionel Messi is considered the greatest soccer player. Now, they don't actually call it soccer. We as Americans call it soccer. They call it football. And what they call our football is football americano, or in this case, just football, since they're playing actual like football with their feet. It's recognized as an integral part of their communities, like I just mentioned, because of the social impact. I mean, women and children, the children specifically watch these teams and they want to be like these players, like a Messi or a Hugo Sanchez. They want to be like these players. Now, that kind of leads into the next point. Let's take a look at it from a more social sense. As I just mentioned with Messi, he brings in these opportunities to connect with Latino sports such as football through their advertising and the marketing of the players such as Messi, Hugo Sanchez down in the bottom, and also during some of these games, traditional music or even chants are played, so that way the crowd and the players feel more connected to their culture. I'm gonna play one short little clip of a little Mexican chant that it was played during the World Cup back in 2018 in Russia. Okay, the next little point is the murals, such as the one on the bottom of Hugo Sanchez. They're painted to not just celebrate their impact that they had on the sport itself, but their culture, much like I mentioned a little earlier with helping them feel a lot more connected to their culture. It helps them like recognize like, wow, a man from like say like Hugo Sanchez from my city actually became a professional and is regarded as one of the greatest Mexican born soccer players of all time. I want to be like him. I want to recognize it and see Hugo Sanchez and be like, I can reach where he is. Now, there were a couple traditions that also were created because of some of these sports, things such as the Caribbean series. It's generally regarded as professional baseball teams, obviously, between the teams located in Latin America, so like Mexico, Venezuela, um, the Dominican Republic. Also, with the DR, they have won the most Caribbean Series championships with 22. Although Venezuela beat the DR most recently to win their eighth overall series win back in February. This they do it during the off season of Major League Baseball. So that way they don't feel constrained of like, okay, well, I need to play my major league game and then I have to play this Caribbean series. So we're gonna do it during the winter, aka February's, after the teams are all done and played and they're kind of in the off season. Now, just to kind of wrap a few things up, these athletes have shaped American sports without them even really trying. And through this, they've enriched their traditions. They've enriched where they came from. These communities where they came from recognize, wow, we were able to, say, for example, bring forth a Lionel Messi, a Hugo Sanchez, a Roberto Clemente. Like, we can do this. Like, we can actually make our impact on the world. And interestingly enough, the diversity of these communities within the United States helps to strengthen the fabric of the culture of the US as a whole. This little quote, a little from Gary Acosta, kind of helps emphasize this point really well, where he says, quote, sports are incredibly influential to American culture, especially for our youth, and possess a great opportunity to showcase Latinos in a more positive light. Social media has helped make sports even more popular and made people hungrier for human connection. For these reasons, I expect the overall popularity of sports to grow in the coming years, with Latinos leading the way at all levels. I bring in this quote because a bit earlier on, he mentions in his website that sports is a universal language. You don't have to speak the same language, but if you guys both play the same sport, you guys are fine. Or like, hey, you don't even have to play the same sport. If you guys both watch the same sport, you can watch it and recognize or even become fans together and grow each other's human connection. Here are just a couple examples of some future stars that when I was looking through that I found that might come to become like another Lionel Messi or Hugo Sanchez, Roberto Clemente, Julio Cesar Chavez. The first is Pablo Torre from La Liga Club Gi- Girona. That is a Barcelonan based team. The next is Juan Soto, a shortstop for the New York Yankees of Major League Baseball. And the last one is Emilio Lara from Liga MX Club America. Here are some of my resources. And although I didn't cite the two books, they are very influential books. The first of which being Jorge Eva writing about how Latinos in U.S. sports such as baseball, soccer, American football can feel isolated, and like how they can build their culture and accept where they are and even grow their own cultural identity, much like Adrian Burgos writes in his book on not just the Negro leagues, but also Latin Americans coming into the United States to play baseball. Thank you guys for your time.